High cholesterol, unhealthy, overweight, heart disease. High-fat foods are bad for us. Myth. Fat-free is better for you. Myth. Do you find most information about fat and cholesterol super confusing? If so, you're not alone. Given all the information out there, it can really get confusing, and you can think that eating fat makes you fat or eating cholesterol will give you artery problems, and it gets really confusing, and there's so much misinformation out there. So in this video, I'm gonna share with you some very common myths that many of us believe about fat and cholesterol, and actually what the truth is. So let's get started. So a major problem is when people hear fat, what they go to immediately is fries and donuts, ice cream and corn dogs, and a bunch of stuff that is just unhealthy and high in fat. And the same goes for cholesterol. People do not hear the word cholesterol and think this is good. You hear bad cholesterol, artery problems, unhealthy, overweight, and you think like, okay, I know people that have had to reduce their cholesterol. But really, scientifically, we absolutely need fat and cholesterol every day in our diet to be healthy. And so these fatty acids, especially omega-3s and omega-6s, are not produced in the body. And so they are super important to get through our dietary sources. So what's the purpose of fat in the body? Well, did you know that fat actually makes up 60% of the brain? Fatty acid molecules have a lot to do with the brain's functioning and performance. Plus, brain and eye development in babies and children as they're growing is really dependent on adequate levels of healthy fat. And both adults and kids require fat in their diets to have healthy skin. And many vitamins like vitamins A, D, E, and K require fat in order to be absorbed into our bodies. Plus, the production of hormones that regulate our bodies is very reliant on having adequate healthy fat intake. So, can you live without fat? Good question. No, you can't live without fat. In fact, if you're not getting adequate fat in your diet, your hair might start to fall out or become very brittle, your skin will become itchy and dry, and you'll be more susceptible to infection or disease. And in fact, there's actually some research that shows that adequate fat levels and from healthy fats is likely correlated to your mood and your sense of well-being. So that's pretty cool too. So another question, does fat cause high cholesterol? So only if the fat that you're consuming is processed, highly saturated, and trans fats, like those found in Little Debbie's muffins that last forever on the shelf, or donuts, or margarine, or things like that that are unhealthy fats, those do put you at risk for having higher LDL levels, which is the bad type of cholesterol. So there's LDL, which we don't want to increase, and there's HDL, which we do want to increase. That's the healthy cholesterol that is important in all of those things we just talked about. So if you replace those unhealthy fats with healthy fats, you can actually lower those LDL levels in the blood. So that's a really good thing. And in doing so, you're also increasing your HDL levels, and that's going to overall reduce your risk of heart disease. So then we've talked a lot about fat. What about cholesterol? What does cholesterol do in the body that's good for us? Every cell, literally every cell in the body requires cholesterol. Cholesterol helps to produce hormones like testosterone and estrogen, and it's also very important in the production of bile, which helps us break down fat. Cholesterol even plays a role in the formulation of vitamin D when our skin is exposed to sunlight. So it's very important. But too much cholesterol can lead to disease. And I'm sure it's no surprise that it's the LDL cholesterol that's causing all those problems. And the reason why the LDL cholesterol is the difficult one is because it's more likely to stick to your arteries. And when it does that, it creates an inflammatory response, which we all know that inflammation is no bueno. So when it sticks to the artery walls, plaque starts to build up, that restricts blood flow, and then that restricted blood flow causes higher blood pressure. That can cause a stroke or a heart attack. So that's no good as well. All right, so now that we have kind of a basic understanding of the value and the potential negative of both fat and cholesterol and all the different variants in between, let's talk about some myths that you probably think are true that actually aren't. Foods rich in cholesterol are bad for you. The myth here is all about what foods you're eating. Cholesterol-rich foods like fried foods and processed foods, of course, those are not good for you, and those are not the way to add cholesterol to your diet. Instead, look to eggs, full-fat dairy, and even shellfish. Fat makes you gain weight. So this is kind of a weird one because anything too much makes you gain weight, right? Even the healthiest of foods would make you gain weight if you had too much of it. But foods that are actually rich in fat and cholesterol and are healthy foods will make you feel fuller longer, leading to less snacking, less needing to eat more. And that's actually helpful for your weight loss goals. I have a whole video on does full fat dairy help with weight loss? You can check that out out, and that answers all those questions with a ton of research. But a gram of fat does carry more calories than a gram of protein or a gram of carbs. So it definitely does have more caloric intake when you have the same amount of something. And while those do add up quicker than other foods, you don't eat as much of them because they're more filling. But fat in and of itself does not make you gain weight. Saturated fat causes heart disease. Okay, so this bears some explaining too. Sure, if you only eat fast food, processed food, and sugar-coated donuts, you're gonna be opening up the door to potential heart disease. But if you're enjoying healthy sources of fat, like having a little bit of cheddar cheese on something, adding some coconut milk to your smoothies, putting a little bit of organic butter on your whole wheat bread, you're gonna be just fine. Diabetes is a risk when you eat fat. Trans fats found in fast foods and prepackaged baked goods are not good for this. But studies show that fatty acids from fat can actually reduce your risk for type 2 diabetes. So again, we want to be looking for those healthy sources of fats like avocado, nuts, and olive oil. Pregnancy is not the time to be eating fats or cholesterol. On the contrary, like we discussed, fetal brains need that important nutrient-rich cholesterol and fat in order to develop appropriately. But all you pregnant mamas out there, remember to look for those healthy sources of fat and cholesterol. Some of my favorites when I've been pregnant have been coconut milk, salmon, and avocados, and eggs. Margarine and omega-6 oils are better for you than butter and animal fats. So let's first start about the omega-6 issue and the oils there. Honestly, you should be having more omega-3 fatty acids than omega-6 fatty acids, and we don't want the omega-6s to override their intake. And studies show that omega-6 rich oils can actually promote inflammation, cancer, and cardiovascular disease, whereas omega-3 fatty acids have actually been shown to prevent those. And this is one that still gets me because my mom always got margarine because it was plant-based, and I just thought that that was healthier because it sounds healthier from a plant than from an animal source. But if you look at our house now, we don't ever have margarine. We always have organic unsalted butter because of the health benefits and because it's a myth that the margarine was better. And it's really hard to unlearn these myths. Our bodies all respond to cholesterol identically. Nope, this is also a myth. The way my body responds could be drastically different than the way your body responds to the consumption of cholesterol-rich and fatty foods. Genetics can also play a part, and there are just some people who have a higher sensitivity to it. Plus, there's some other factors that are involved on an individual basis, like your current level of inflammation, whether or not you smoke, your blood pressure, and just your general lifestyle can play an important role on how your body reacts to cholesterol and fat. Fat-free is the way to go. Myth. You see, when food is marketed as fat-free, it usually means they've pumped other things into that food to make up for the lack of flavor from the lack of fat, because fat adds flavor. I have a whole video that I can link to you where I get pretty heated about how marketing can really trick you into thinking you're being healthy when it's not. High-fat foods are unhealthy. Let's all say it together now. Myth. There are so many foods out there that are demonized as being unhealthy that are actually healthy. So this makes me super sad. But things like cheese and chocolate and coffee and fat just happens to be one of them. This is just not gonna fly. This is no longer something we're gonna believe that high-fat foods are bad for us. It's on us to understand the difference between what types of fats those are. And so if you'd like to learn more about how to create balanced meals and how to include healthy fats in your diet, come check out the 30-Day Healthy Program. I have 4 weeks of meal plans that are clean eating, promoting healthy, nutrient-rich cholesterol and fat in your foods. You'll actually probably wind up losing weight because of how healthy and delicious and well-balanced these meals are. So come check it out, and I'll see you in the next video.